You're listening to A Slice of Therapy with me, Alun Parry. When I was a little boy, there was an event that used to take place in Liverpool, where I'm from, every year. And it was called the Lord Mayor's Parade. So Liverpool at the time had a Lord Mayor. And it was basically a local councillor who, it was a kind of a prestigious role, I suppose. But there was a parade to honour the Lord Mayor, where all different members of the community would kind of get together and put this parade on. And it was the kind of thing you often see on these parades. It was trucks and lorries basically all dressed up and, some sort of show on the back of each of them, or people dressed up. And it would kind of move through the city centre, and people would line the streets in order to watch the Lord Mayor's Parade. And every year, my mum used to say to me, "It's the Lord Mayor's Parade at the weekend." And I'd go, "Yay!" And then we'd go to the Lord Mayor's Parade. Now, the secret thing that I didn't want to tell my mum is that I hated the Lord Mayor's Parade. For me, it was really boring. I mean, first of all, everyone had to wait for quite a long time for the parade to actually reach our bit of the city. And so I remember as a tiny little boy sat at the curbside, just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then these kind of trucks would saunter past at really slow speed. And it wasn't worth the wait at all. And so I couldn't stand the Lord Mayor's Parade. But it was clear to me as a little boy that my mum was really excited about it. She would always announce it with great excitement that the Lord Mayor's Parade was on. And so I didn't want to disappoint her. And so I would also respond with great excitement. And we would go to the Lord Mayor's Parade and have a really boring day. And a couple of years ago, we were talking about the Lord Mayor's Parade, and I said, "Actually, Mum, I've got a confession to make. I really hated the Lord Mayor's Parade. I thought it was the most boring thing on earth." And she said, "Well, why didn't you say anything at the time?" And I said, "Well, I could see how much you enjoyed the Lord Mayor's Parade, so I just wanted to, join in with that. I didn't want to disappoint you because I could see that you wanted to go." She said, "I didn't want to go. I hated the Lord Mayor's Parade. I thought it was really boring. I was going for you." And so there we were, the pair of us, in this pact to go to the Lord Mayor's Parade every year, even though neither of us actually enjoyed going at all. And when I think of this story, I think of a time where a friend of mine came round to have lunch with me and I cooked him soup. It's a homemade soup I really enjoy having, and I have it a lot. And I was having some bread with it. And I got the loaf of bread. In order to be hospitable, I thought, well, I'm going to give him the part of the bread, which is the part of the loaf, which is the best bit of bread to have with soup. And that's the end piece, the kind of crust piece. So anyway, I did. I gave him that. And he looked at it somewhat forlornly. And eventually he said, "Would it be possible for me to have just one of the ordinary sliced pieces of bread rather than the end piece?" And it turned out he didn't want the end piece at all. Now, thankfully, he made his true feelings known because it was my favourite piece for soup anyway, to have the end piece with soup. I thought that was the best bit. But because I was predicting what he wanted, I ended up getting it wrong and was only saved by the fact that he didn't join in that game. But of course, when it comes to the Lord Mayor's Parade, I did join in that game, and so did my mum. And so what we were left with was two people who didn't actually want to do the thing that we were doing. Now, the difference between those two stories, as I said, is that in the second story with the bread, my people-pleasing, if I can put it like that, was actually rescued by the fact that my friend just told me what he really wanted, told me what his needs really were. Now, if he'd have been people-pleasing as well, then we'd have had a problem, because he'd have sat there eating my favourite part of the bread. I'd have been sacrificing my favourite part of the bread. And really, he'd have wanted the ordinary sliced bits of the bread that form up the majority of the loaf, and neither of us would have got what we wanted. And this is the ironic, backfiring thing about people-pleasing, is that what often happens is that we end up with a double defeat. We end up with a lose-lose. Because when we're people-pleasing, we sacrifice our own needs in order to meet what we're guessing is the needs of the other person. And because we're guessing, we often get it wrong. And so we end up in this strange situation where our own needs don't get met in order to get their needs, but then their needs don't get met either. And this is one of the big curses of people-pleasing, I suppose. You end up going to the Lord Mayor's parade every year, and you're doing it for the other person who's doing it for you, and neither of you want to be there. Now imagine instead a scenario where we actually state our needs, where we actually claim our own needs and put them on the table, and that the other person does the same. Imagine a world where we don't sacrifice ourselves in pursuit of trying to please somebody else, but we simply share what it is that we need and are open to hearing what it is that they need. Now, when I think back to the Lord Mayor's parade, what would have happened there is that I would have said, I don't really like going to the Lord Mayor's parade. My mum would have said, no, nor do I. What shall we do instead? And then I could have put something on the table in terms of what I liked. She could have done the same, and we could have ended up having a win-win situation rather than a lose-lose. And this, I suppose, is the tragedy of people-pleasing, because the best thing that we can do is to end up with a win-win situation in our interactions with other people. But when we're people-pleasing, a win-win becomes impossible, simply because, in terms of our own needs, we push ourselves into a loss. We end up going to the Lord Mayor's parade that we don't want to go to. We end up giving away our favourite piece of the loaf to someone who doesn't even want it. And so a win-win, even if we guess their needs correctly, comes off the table. And of course, we often don't get them correctly, so we end up with a lose-lose. And so the problem with people-pleasing is it makes the win-win impossible, when win-wins are so often within our grasp. And so if this story about the Lord Mayor's parade resonates with you, maybe you might start to claim your own needs. Maybe you might start revealing what it is that you truly want. Maybe you can try and aim, instead of people-pleasing, to people-please in a way that pleases you as well, rather than at the expense of you. Maybe you will commit to putting yourself in the equation, because it's only when you're in the equation, and it's only when you focus not just on the other person but on you as well, is it at all possible to get to that win-win. So if you like this idea, then please spread it around, share the episode. That'll really help, and it'll give someone else the benefit as well. You can work with me directly. I'm Alun Parry at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. And of course, subscribe to the podcast. It's completely free. There's a new one every day, and it'll make sure you never miss an episode again. So for now, thanks for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow with another one.